how did you got the opportunity to work in Puerto Rico for Carlos Colón? How did that happen?
That was kind of an interesting deal there. Actually, what happened was is I was being looked at by WWE at the time, and I think they thought that I needed a little bit more seasoning, and I needed a lot more experience in their eyes. So what happened was is Gerald Briscoe, I had a tryout with WWE, and I guess I was still green as a blade of grass. So what happened was is Dory Funk, was done training me at the time, and I went back and I worked with Gerald Briscoe, the high school they had at the time, and I actually trained his son Wes Briscoe for in high school. His son was wrestling in high school. So what happened is basically, long story short, Jerry was like, all right, well, I think I'm going to go ahead and send you, because IWA was looking at me, or Victor Quinones and Dutch Mantel, but I don't know how sold they were on me. So what happened is Jerry was like, no, I'm going to send you to Carlos, and you want to go somewhere? I'm going to send you to Carlos Colón, World Wrestling Council. I said, okay. And he said, well, I want you to go down there, and I don't care if he has you selling hot dogs, selling tickets, selling hot dogs, whatever, you're going to do it. Setting up the ring, whatever he wants you to do, you're going to do it. I said, okay. So I went in there and worked with his son for like about a couple of months before I left. Went down there, walked in there, and was ready to go. And it was kind of funny when I got there. Atletico, the referee, picked me up at the airport, and he didn't speak a lick of English. I actually kind of taught Atletico some English, but at the time he didn't know nothing. He goes, it has a sign up, Brent Dail. And I was like, me? And he goes, okay, come on. And so he puts me in the car. I'm driving around looking. I go to the office. I meet Carlos and Jovica, come back. They go, all right, well, you're going to go to the Dahlia. That's where you're going to stay. I was like, okay. So when I got there, I had no clue what to do. I didn't speak Spanish. So people were kind of looking at me like I was an idiot. I call up Jerry Briscoe. This is the funny story. I call him up on a payphone. I said, well, I'm here. And he goes, and I said, well, he said, what do you think? I go, explained it a little bit to him. He goes, well, welcome to the wrestling business. Call me in a couple of months. Click. I was like, okay, what do I do now? So that was kind of a sink or swim mentality. So, and as you can see, I swam. So, it's really what happened. So
I'll translate that interesting story to Spanish.
Yeah.
Brent Dail tuvo un tryout de WWE, ya trabajando para ello, y llega el momento en que pues estaba muy verde, es lo que ellos entendían, y Gerald Briscoe y WWA le tenían los ojos puestos encima. Ya Brent Dail estaba entrenando a Wes Briscoe, el hijo de Gerald, que estaba en high school, y Gerald le dice, ok, te voy a enviar a Puerto Rico. No importa si es vendiendo hot dogs, no importa si es montando cuadrilátero, no importa si es de seguridad, vas a ir allí, vas a crecer. Ok, lo que sea que haya que hacer, dijo Brent, vamos allá. Llega a Puerto Rico y lo recoge el Atlético, el árbitro. El Atlético no sabía nada de inglés. El Atlético estaba con un cartel que decía Brent Dail, ahí, paradito. Y entonces llega Brent y le dice, that's me, ese soy yo. Y se montan acá, ok, vente. Se montan el carro, lo lleva a la oficina de Carlos Colón, allí en San Juan. Conoce a Carlos, conoce a Jovica y dice, ok, vente, ahora vamos a ir a donde te vas a quedar. Lo sueltan allí. Adiós, ok. Vamos a buscar a Gerald Briscoe, déjame llamarlo, agarra un payphone, en aquel momento un teléfono público que ya no existen, antes sí existían. Brent agarra el teléfono, le dice a Gerald, bueno, aquí estoy, ya llegué. Y Gerald le dice, ¿qué hago ahora? Y Gerald le dice como que, ok, bienvenido a la industria de la lucha libre. Me llamas en unos meses. Clic. Y colgó el teléfono. Y así fue como Brent.
It was a little nuts. I was like, okay, they said, you're going to be in Juana Diaz on Thursday. I was like, okay, how do I get there? Figure it out. I was like, okay. So that's kind of how I was when I first got there. So.
And you were in San Juan. Juana Diaz is on the southern part of the island. Holy shit.
Yeah, I was in Isla Verde, so it was like,
it was
cool though. It was cool though. I loved it, But I was like, wow, there is like beach everywhere and pretty girls walking everywhere. This is nice. I was like, I have a funny story actually. When I got in my room, I turned on the TV, and the first song that was playing on there was turned on the video channel. I guess it was on an Elvis Crespo song,
Suavemente.
Dame Cerveza or whatever. Come on, and I'm watching the video, and I'm like, okay, is this what I'm in for here? And then, you know, just the way it was. And I go, okay, well, at least I can know how to order beer here. So I walked outside. I walked down the beach and I said, well, it looks like the video. So I'm good. 5 years later, I left. So pretty much. So yeah, good.
How did you made it to Juana Diaz in your first night? I mean, did you rent a car? Did you met someone?
No. Actually, what happens, do you remember the tag team, the Market Crashers?
The Market Crashers, no.
Okay, it was you know, the Sheik that's in that's runs PCW out in California.
Okay.
Won the NWA title, you know, him.
Yes, yes.
Him and his tag team partner, or Joe. Him and his tag team partner and Sean, they were it was Dow Jones and Nasdaq or whatever, you know, they were called. Anyways, they were in a program at the time with Thunder and Lightning. So they were there, and then a kid named Justin Sane was there.
Yeah.
And they told me, you're going to be a heel. I go, okay. So I rode with them to the town. They said, yeah, you can ride with us. You just got to pay some gas money. So, okay. So I ride with them to the town. And then when I get there, they go, no, you're not going to be a heel. You're going to be a baby face. Go over there.
The hell?
I was new. They had no clue. And I wrestled Ruben Pacino in my first match. That's what I did. And go ahead.
And how was the audience that night for you? You know, your first match in Puerto Rico.
Slam packed. Yeah, there were so many people. That's probably one of the biggest crowds that I, at the time, besides Fort Homer, Hesterly, Armley, that I wrestled in front of. Oh yeah, or in WWE. But you know, I was really surprised for the amount of for how big the crowd was there. It was pretty huge, and it was a small town. So I mean, that's what was cool about those small towns. I mean, those people, they would come in droves out there. So that was the cool part. So, but it was fun. I met Invader the first time. That was like, he was the booker at the time, and he goes, okay, I want to talk to you. Okay. So I sat down and talked to him, and then he was telling me what I needed to do and stuff. And I was like, okay. And he was, you know, getting acquainted with me. Oh, you're Gerald Briscoe's guy you brought in, right? I said, yes, sir. And then we talked, and then he told me what he wanted me to do, and went from there. So
awesome. I'll translate the first part and then the second one.
Oh yeah, go ahead. Do what you got to do. I kind of talk all over the place. So yeah, I'm
also,
like tangent guy. I go way out here, they come back, you know. So go ahead.
Awesome. So, cuando Brent Dail ya está en la isla, uno de los equipos que ya estaba haciendo un programa con Thunder y Lightning, y además de eso, otro de los compañeros, Saint, son quienes le dicen, ok, eres un rudo, te vas a montar con nosotros, lo único que tienes que hacer es pagar el dinero de gasolina. Pero antes de eso, él estaba viendo un comercial del Biscrespo, lo de dame cerveza, y es como que veía la playa, veía mujeres bonitas, y es como que, ok, por lo menos ya sé cómo voy a pedir mi cerveza, dame cerveza. Llega allí y sale, ok, esto es exactamente como el comercial. Historia larga corta, le toca luchar en Juana Díaz en su primer día, se monta con los muchachos, llega al coliseo o a la cancha de en Juana Díaz, y el lugar estaba lleno, la gente estaba metida. Conocen su primera noche allí al Invader número 1, quien era el head booker de WWC en aquella noche, y le dice, te le dicen que vas a ser técnico. Es como que, para me dijeron que iba a ser rudo, no, pues vas a ser técnico. Y como que cambiaron, como que tú eres el muchacho de Gerald Brisco. Sí, yo soy el muchacho. Perfecto. Y le explicaron lo que tenía que hacer en ese momento. How complicated was, or easy, adjusting, you know, to living in Puerto Rico? Because, for example, I've spoke with people that live here before, Andy Anderson, for example, and one of the things they mentioned was that the Puerto Rican time is like, if they say 8, it's never 8.
Oh yeah.
What was the easiest or the hardest part?
Oh yeah, the funny part was I would like literally, like somebody, for instance, would come pick me up for a show, and I'm not going to mention any names because I don't want to throw anybody under a bus. But what they would do is they would say, "Oh, I'd be there at 6." Okay. So I'm sitting outside at 6. 8 o'clock they show up, and then we still got to drive ahead of us. So I would literally, and a lot of times at that time I would be like the first match. So I would have to call on my cell phone and tell them, okay, I'm coming, hurry up, or we'll have to move you to second or whatever. So I would literally be in my gear with just like some warm up pants and a t-shirt on, and they would be driving me to the town. And, you know, I'm not going to mention any names, Joe Bravo. Anyways, he would show up and I would ride with him, or like Eddie and them were pretty good. Eddie and Carly were pretty good about picking me up on time. But some guys, they would show up and you're like, I'm going to show up now. And I would get there and I was literally taking my stuff off and the bell is ringing and they're telling me what I need to do. And then I'm running and I'm like getting dressed real quick. I'm like literally getting where I need to be in the car. And then I would like run into the building, throw my stuff down. Ding, your music's hitting. And then I would like go to the ring and do what I need to do. So it was like, for a little while, it was like that. And then after a while, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to start renting a car.
Easier.
And I'll take care of it myself. So after a while, I started making a little bit more money. And then I was like, I'll rent a car on the weekends. I think I'll be all right. So I got enough of that to where I was like, I don't want to be rushed. I'll take my time. They're not going to be rushed. So why am I going to be rushed? You know, so that was the whole thing on that. So it was kind of funny, but go ahead.
I'll translate that.
Yeah.
¿Cuál fue la parte más complicada o difícil de complicada o fácil de moverse a Puerto Rico? Una de las cosas, obviamente, es el tiempo puertorriqueño. Le decían a Brent, vamos a buscar a las 6. Y Brent, I'll be there. Se sienta a la parte afuera, espera, normal. Nadie llega. 8 de la noche. Ahí llegaron a buscarlo. Es como que, mano, 2 horas de más. Pero en Puerto Rico eso es normal. Entonces él los llamaba como que, mira, yo soy la primera lucha. Yo soy la primera. Vamos a avanzar. Llegaba así, sí, ya voy por ahí, yo voy en camino, la clásica. Y llegaba, entonces ya estaba en la ropa de lucha, tenía el pantalón corto, tenía la t-shirt, tenía la tuerto puesto, que era como que muchas veces cuando llegaba el coliseo, simplemente sonaba la campana y ya él iba, se quitaba la camisa entrando y ya le decían qué tenía que hacer y entraba. Así funcionaba la cosa. O tener que llamar para mover la segunda hasta que un día dijo, ¿sabes qué? Ya empezó a hacer un poco más dinero. Voy a alquilar un carro los fines de semana. Y eso fue lo que hizo y empezó a moverse para ir a su ritmo y a su pace constantemente. I remember you specifically in Ponce, my hometown. Yeah. So I was obviously a fan of WWC growing up. And I remember seeing you when I was like maybe 10, 12 years. You enter with your gimmick and everything. And while being a heel, you were highly probable the only guy in the roster that, you know, shook kids' hands and took time to sign autographs. And like, you did it as a heel, you did it as a baby face without any problem. And that's why, at least in my opinion, you easily won the audience here in Puerto Rico. But, you know, working with them may be complicated. How different was adjusting to wrestling in Puerto Rico, the audience, the system, the backstage politics, everything, compared to what you did before?
Okay, well, a lot of it, that was kind of like my first company that I'd really been in.
Okay.
So I was pretty much new on everything, you know. So I had, you know, been training with the Funks, and training is a lot different from being actually working for a company. And then in WWE, you know, everybody, when I would go backstage, everybody's very polite. Mm-hmm. There might be stuff on the, you know, but up front, everybody's polite, very nice and polite and stuff like that. But, you know, that's just the front. But when you would go to Puerto Rico, I would hear people, like, as far as, I got real good after a while of understanding Spanish. Now, here's the thing. People were like, well, why didn't you speak Spanish very well? I said, well, here's what I would do. Is I would go up and attempt Spanish to talk to somebody. And they would turn around and say, I speak English. Oh. I know you don't speak Spanish. So they would sit there. It was like they were kayfabing me. And then they go, oh, yeah, I speak English. And then they start talking to me. And I was like, that would happen all the time. So, well, we learn English here. So I was like, okay. So that would happen. But being backstage, I would say working with the crowds and stuff like that, the crowds were very live. Like, there were times that I really pissed them off a lot. And then there were times that they really liked me. After a while, it got to the point where I was liked, hated. Then people just like, okay, this guy's cool. So it was like, let's just go with it. And then after a while, they're trying to make me a heel and people were liking me regardless. So because I just woke up one day and I worked with Roddy Piper one time and he's told me straight up, he goes, he watched me and he said, listen, you got it. You just need to, like, you want to be the man here. He goes, you got to make sure everybody thinks you're nuts around here. I said, okay. So I started doing that and it worked. And just with the crowd, I would try to get them going. I would try to do whatever I need, backstage politics. For a while, it was hard for a little bit, but after a while, you know, I started winning people over. you know, and started, you know, work. And then after a while, they were started having me come up with my own finishes after a while, you know, or what they wanted me to do or whatever, you know. So, and I could work with just about anybody. So there was a lot of guys that I got them started. They got started early there, and I would work with them and try to make them good, and try to work with them and try to make them a better wrestler from anywhere from 450 to, okay, Orlando Colón, like guys that had just started in their careers, and they're like, all right, you're going to work with them and you're basically going to teach them. I was like, okay, so that's a lot of what I would have to do. And that's just a little bit of guys like BJ, Free, and all these guys. There's a ton of guys that it was like that. And it was just, you know, after a while, I think they had a lot of confidence in me after a while to know that I could carry the ball and do what I needed to do. So, you know, that's what I tried to do. So I hope you can translate that the best you can.
I can.
Yeah.
¿Cuál fue la parte más difícil de adaptarse a la lucha libre puertorriqueña, a las políticas backstage, al público, etcétera? Menciona que obviamente en WWE todo el mundo era muy educado, muy polite, muy respetuoso, al menos así en el principio, pero en WWC todo era distinto. Entonces, pese a que fue su primera empresa oficial, las cosas cambiaban un poco, la política backstage era distinta, poco a poco comienza a ganarse a las personas que están encargadas, y entonces él era lo mismo con los fanáticos, él era odiado, era amado, y entonces cuando intentaron virarlo, volverlo heel, ya la gente como que este tipo es cool, y como que no lo respaldaba, era como que gracias al mismo consejo que le dio Piper, que lo que necesitaba era, ok, esta gente tiene que pensar que estás loco, de esta manera te van a mal, y efectivamente, así mismo lo hizo. En un punto llegó el momento en donde le dejaban y le daban la oportunidad de él hacer sus movidas o de crear sus finales de lucha. Y él fue la persona que comenzó a trabajar las carreras de 450, de Orlando Colón, del Fenómeno BJ, entre muchas otras personas que llegaban a la empresa y pues les tocaba comenzar de alguna manera, y Brent era la persona indicada. After so many years with WWC, I believe it was 5 years, why did you and WWC parted separate pathways?
Well, I felt like that well, first off, there wasn't anything real big. It was just the fact that I kind of felt like it was time.
Mm-hmm.
I've been there a really long time, and I kind of looked at it like, I want to get a shot at WWE. I've been here long enough. I feel like something's about to go. And there was a lot of guys that were like the main guys, like Brian and certain guys that wanted to work with me. Talking about backstage politics, they were like guys that were saying, "Hey, listen, I want to work with him." In the office, there was starting to be a glass ceiling to where it was like I got into arguments, like straight up arguments with Carlos and Jovica, trying to sell myself to be the man, the top guy. And they're like, no, you da, 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 da. I mean, I really started to see the glass ceiling then. That there was a certain level that I was going to get to, and then I wasn't going to go above that. And even though I'd already worked with guys that were the universal title, like they would do like me and Abad, like title versus title, the junior heavyweight champ versus universal champ, and could prove that I could draw the fans. We were in Orgacovis one night, and it was like announced on the fly, like it was a substitute match. They did it. The whole crowd went freaking crazy. It ended up being like a 2 out of 3 falls match. The whole place went crazy, and it was packed, and they loved it. And it was like, and I was proving it even at the last anniversary show. I mean, there were people there with signs that were saying Brent Dail is WWC. There were people standing up for the national anthem. Before they're throwing crap at me, now they're standing up for it. And I'm like, okay, if this doesn't say anything, I don't know what will. So I had guys lobbying for me, all kinds of stuff. And they just, I don't know, they just weren't having it. So I was like, I argued with them. I did this. And finally I was like, you know what? It's time. When Christmas comes around, year's over, I'm out. That's it. I'm going to take off. I didn't tell them no. I let them know at the end. It got so bad, I gave him a 2-week notice. Carlos tried to get me a job in Puerto Rico to stay, a teaching job, so I would stay. That's how, like with Brian's school that he was the principal of, tried to get me a job so I would stay. That's like how much it was like, okay, well, you're not The only way I'm going to get to WWE is if they think that I can be the top draw. So either way, I'm leaving. So it's like, just had enough. I was kind of burned out too. So it was just like, I had over 1,000 matches, honestly, in Puerto Rico in 5 years.
Wow.
1,000. I broke my hip while I was there. I'd all kinds of stuff, and I just battled through it and just kept going. I mean, it was like a dang Iron Man there. So it was like, it's just how I was. It was how I was ingrained. A lot of it had to do with the amateur wrestling mentality, how amateur wrestler thinks, no, you're gonna keep going and you're gonna bull your way through and you're gonna do good and it doesn't matter. So it's really kind of the mentality there. So that's how I was. And then later on, it was just like, I made that decision. Maybe it wasn't the greatest decision, but at the time I kind of felt it. It was like, okay, this is what needs to happen. Even though I didn't really want to leave, I felt like maybe I can convince them. But it kind of got to where a point that it was like, I don't feel like there was any convincing them anymore. So it was like, time to go. So, that's pretty much it. So.
I'll translate that to Spanish. ¿Por qué Brent Dail y WWC toman caminos separados? Él le llama el techo de cristal. Él comienza a ver hasta el nivel en donde él iba a poder llegar. El campeón universal, Brian, al igual que las caras de la empresa, querían trabajar con Brent Dail y llegaban a la oficina, al igual que el mismo Brent, y Carlos decía otra cosa, y Brent comenzó a ver hasta el nivel en donde él iba a poder llegar dentro de la empresa. Entonces hacían luchas como campeón contra campeón, el campeón junior contra el campeón universal, y la gente se volvía loca. Entonces siempre reaccionaban de manera positiva, las casas estaban llenas, la gente lo compraba, pero nunca le dieron la oportunidad de ser la cara de la empresa. Él siempre quería llegar a WWE y él entendía que la decisión correcta en aquel momento dado era marcharse de la empresa. Carlos quería que se quedara, consiguió un trabajo de maestro para él en la escuela de otro compañero, pero no, simplemente le dio 2 semanas de anticipación y le dijo, después de Navidades me voy. Y así lo hizo. E incluso hubo luchas muy buenas en el transcurso, como una que tuvo en Orocovis, que eventualmente se transformó en una lucha de 2 a 3 caídas, pero nunca hubo nada más superior a eso. How was your relationship with Carlos and Jovica?
They treated me like I felt like a son to them a lot, because I mean, I would like, even when I was a heel, I mean, I would like, they would sneak me over to their house and stuff like that, and I'd have barbecues with him. I mean, Jovica would like, he would take me home from the office and he would basically like trying to school me on like what I needed to know. I felt like every time that I was sitting with them, it was like sitting under a learning tree. So it was like always, it was like they were just trying to pour like a ton of knowledge into me. Does that make sense? Because they were even saying, I could see you one day like running your own company. I could see that one day just because of the mentality you have. And I attempted it, but it takes a lot of money to get a promotion going, so, but the thing is though, but I feel like if I had the means, it wouldn't be hard. But right now, it is what it is. But I always felt like that they were pouring a lot of knowledge in me. And I feel like that I have all this knowledge that I'm trying not to let go to waste. But because there's a lot of things I feel like that I have to offer, because of all the knowledge I know. And there's a lot of stuff because I was taught what it takes to draw money, what it takes to run a company, what it takes to get yourself over, all that kind of stuff. And it's just, now the only problem that Dutch Mantel used to tell me is like, here's the problem with WWC in Puerto Rico. He goes, you get a ton of work here. But he goes, it is the problem with, it's not as much now, but during that time, it's under the radar. So you're getting all this experience at the time. Now this is 2005, 2006. Now, a lot different. People have more exposure. People know a lot more about it than they used to. Back then they did, but I always felt that there was something there. It didn't get the kind of media attention that say Mexico gets, or Japan. And you can agree with that. Yeah. It doesn't, some of it doesn't get the same type of thing. So what it was is like, you're getting a ton of experience, but you're right under that radar. So you have guys like at the time, the indie guys in states like CM Punk and Samoa Joe and guys like that are getting recognized because they're working the indies in the US. And he's basically breaking it down to me. He's like, you probably got 10 times more experience than any of them do. The problem is that the exposure is your exposure. So it's like, I was like, I get it. So at first I didn't believe him, but then later on I was like, I think he's right. It's like, you know, so that's just the thing. And there's a lot more, I think, time for self-promotion when you're working the indies. You know, you don't work as much. So there's a lot more ways of self-promoting yourself. You know, like some of these tours, like say you go to Japan, you're there for a couple of weeks, you come back, you ain't got nothing to do for a little while. You can promote yourself. You can do this, you can do that. Puerto Rico, it is a roller coaster. You are every week. So it's like you get on a train and you get on a roller coaster and you don't stop. You don't have time to sit around and go, oh, let me put myself over here. Let me do myself here. Let me get all this promotion of myself here. It doesn't work like that. And it's just, do you agree with me or not? It's just kind of that's kind of the thing. You don't have a lot of that stuff. And Carlson and Jovica are not real big on bringing a ton of attention to themselves. They're more like whatever's on the island in the Caribbean. Now there's some attention to them, but there's not the same. Does that make sense? That's what I'm getting at. It's just the fact of that. I mean, hopefully people could understand what I'm getting at here with this, but there's something missing there. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You know, in the sense of exposure and media and things like that. And I think it's great now that we have it, but before there wasn't there. It wasn't. So.
No, where there were like 3 different forums: PR Wrestling, our brand Lucha Libre Online, but that at that point it was Wrestling Time magazine, and they had another magazine as well. So yeah, the exposures definitely, it wasn't just the same. And how about the payrolls compared to the US? Were you earning as much money as, for example, CM Punk was earning in the independents?
Here's the deal. I don't have any complaints. A lot of guys would complain about the money. Okay. Now, I don't know if it's because of something they worked out with Briscoe or whatever. I always got paid. Okay. I always got paid. I always got my money. I was making anywhere from a guarantee of like, say, $500 a week. Okay. Now, and then, but that also included, I also had to pay for rent for I mean, that wasn't free for me to live there. I did have to pay for lights. I had to pay for an apartment, all that kind of stuff. So I would get like a paycheck and then there'd be all these deductions in it. I get an envelope that had deduction here, deduction here. Okay, there's what you got left. And I'm like, okay. So that was, but as far as earning, yes. But then there was opportunities to make more money if you moved up the card. There was opportunities to make more. So, and that's the big thing. It's just like anything. If you're drawing in some money, you're going to get paid more. So that's really how it worked. But I wasn't, I was able to live okay. I mean, I was able to live in Isla Verde. So what does that tell you? So, I mean, and you know, Isla Verde is not a cheap place to live. It's not cheap. So, I was kind of happy. I think it was kind of cool. I got to live my dream. I was like, listen, I'm living my dream. I'm on an island full of like, being like a kid in a candy store with all these, you know, it's like walk around as a dang Playboy mansion, or it's Miami when you're walking outside. And it's like, cool. So it was great. I enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun, but I think it was the point of like in 5 years, I looked up and go, what am I doing? Where am I going? What do I need to do? Am I furthering myself here? Am I going to stay here forever? Or do I want to throw myself out there and see what happens? Does that make sense? But unfortunately, you're under the radar. You know what I mean? So you don't have, they know of you, they know who you are because of all the stuff with Briscoe and all that stuff. But as far as the US knows of you, but maybe guys in the wrestling business know you, but people outside of that in the bigger market might not know who you are. So that's the big thing on that, because, you know, I mean, that's the best way I can probably explain it. So hopefully you can translate all that.
I can. So,
No.
en su momento, ¿cómo era la relación con Carlos y con Jovica? Bueno, siempre lo trataron como un hijo, siempre fue respetuoso. Él iba a los barbecues en las casas de ellos. Jovica era quien lo llevaba a su apartamento. Siempre lo intentaban de inculcar el mayor conocimiento posible porque lo veían mentalidad de promotor en el futuro. Dice, tú vas a poder ser promotor. Lo intentó, pero no, obviamente no es nada barato ser promotor. O sea, tener su propia empresa de lucha libre cuesta mucho dinero. Y entre las varias cosas que me dice, me habla de la exposición. Dutch Mantel le dice a él, mira, trabajar en Puerto Rico está excelente, adquieres muchísima experiencia, conoces mucha gente buena, etcétera, 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 pero hay un problema, no tienes la misma exposición que tendrías en Estados Unidos, en Japón o en México, porque estás debajo del radar. Y eso entonces complicó un poco la cosa, porque Carlos y Jovica tampoco buscaban atraer atención de los medios internacionales. Simplemente era, pues, lo que estaba pasando en la isla y ya. Y algo que es muy cierto. Y lo era para aquel momento. Ahora las cosas han cambiado un poquito. No tanto, pero han cambiado un poco. Y lo interesante de esto es que obviamente él estaba viviendo su sueño, le estaban pagando una cantidad de dinero, que fue otra de las preguntas que le hice, que era bastante buena, o sea, una garantía de $500 semanales, era buena, pero el problema está, vivía en Isla Verde. Entonces cuando le entregaban el cheque o el dinero, tú veías en el sobre deducción, renta, agua, luz, y entonces cambiaba electricidad, cambia todo un poco con las deducciones, como que si estaba viviendo su sueño, sí tenía obviamente muchas mujeres bonitas alrededor, la playa y muchas cosas buenas, pero de aquí, después así de 5 años de estar ahí, se pregunta como que, ¿qué estoy haciendo con mi vida? ¿A dónde voy? ¿Qué vamos a hacer? Y eso es lo que lo lleva a su decisión de marcharse de la empresa y de la isla.